Eric, welcome.
Peter, thank you.
Thank you for coming to do this. You're the hardest person to schedule in the world, but we got here.
Well, I appreciate you being patient with me. Forgive me.
No, all forgiven. Thanks for doing this. We're joined by my friend Travis. I've made a few podcasts with Travis. I tend to be better asking the questions, but when we get into a bit of a discussion about deeper topics, Travis here is the expert I asked to join us.
He's the muscle.
He's the muscle. He's the weight. He's the brain. Where do we start?
There's no chance I'm the brain at this table.
Well, there's no chance I'm the brain. All right. So you've been going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole for around, I know you've been in a long time, but.
Well, I found out about it, I think, in 2010 from Jordan Greenhall, now Jordan Hall. And I was astounded.
But you've been a little bit more public about it recently. I care about your recent experience.
Sure. Okay. In 2010, I wrote this essay called Go Virtual, Young Man, about decamping into the electron layer. The idea that we should leave our physical personas behind and that we should realize that more and more things. And it was in part built on the idea that the double spend problem in crypto is effectively a conservation problem in the physical world. So how is it that my gold isn't your gold until it changes custodianship? The fact that that problem was soluble at a distributed level took me completely by surprise. Did not see the technology, did not understand that it was imminent. And when I found out about it, my thought about it back then wasn't as money. It was, oh my gosh, someone has figured out how to port the constraints of the physical world into the digital layer. And therefore, we can set about rebuilding everything that we know to be possible, because the physical world is a proof that what we see in front of us, bottles, glasses, microphones, are real.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea that you could take physical law, come up with a digital form of it, and then have that govern a system so that you can't create, you can't counterfeit, you can't have a central bank come in and execute a seigniorage play against your currency. All of those things had me in mind of how do we decamp the world of the physical and move into the world of data, of bits, of electrons, rather than the world of atoms. And only recently did I come in contact with the Bitcoin universe by mumbling, or I guess I also had Vitalik of Ethereum fame on my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And many Bitcoiners responded to that in a way that I had not sort of understood, which is, how dare you talk to charlatans and scoundrels? And
how dare you?
How dare you?
I was one of those.
Were you?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I can't remember what I put. I think I probably put something, why are you talking to a scammer?
Really?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I'd have to go and dig it out.
It doesn't seem very nice, Peter.
Well, we're not very nice people sometimes. We are actually. Bitcoiners are really nice people.
I can't figure it out, because you guys do seem to be sort of weirdly idealistic and decent, but somehow you appreciate the aesthetic of being a dick.
It's a little bit like it's like your body's own defense system against getting sick. Like you get food poisoning and you're just vilely ill afterwards, coming out of both ends. You wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, right? And that's your body repelling this thing that it deems to be dangerous to it. And I think for the OG Bitcoiners that have been around since, the 2012 cycle or whatever, I think they've seen, and that's not me, but I know these guys, and I've studied the history of Bitcoin and the various alt cycles that we've done previously, and they've seen so much of it come and go, and just wave after wave of things that promised to do something but then not actually deliver on it, that I think the collective OG Bitcoiner community and then the new Bitcoiners that have added on to that have adopted this stance that is commonly referred to as maximalism, which is the refusal to sort of even entertain that maybe there could be something else out there worthwhile.
Yeah.
But also, we're very protective over this Bitcoin thing because it's a project that's taken 30 years to exist. The previous projects by cypherpunks to try and build this form of digital money, which many failed.
Right.
And finally, we have one that's worked. and it is working.
And it's worth fighting for.
It's worth fighting for.
Yeah.
And the way people explained it to me, because I made shows about toxicity, saying you need to be nicer, you need to be welcoming people in. But
No, I didn't say that.
oh, no, I did.
I know, but I want to be very clear
Lex Friedman did.
that, yeah, that's the kumbaya love perspective.
Yeah.
I probably have a different perspective.
Well, so I think what it is once you've been in for a while, and like Travis said, you hear the same bullshit over and over again. But once you have your material amount of net wealth in there, you want it protected. It has to be hard
But
to
that's
change.
talking your book. And it's if the issue is that my net worth is in this object, and now the idea is that object is susceptible to going down or going up, depending upon how people feel about it, I have to ensure that people feel about this in a way that's coincident with my financial goals.
No,
And so,
that's a different point. So forget the financial goals. We've had all this stuff with Elon recently, and plenty of us, have said, "Fuck off, sell your Bitcoin. We don't want you here. Like if you're going to cause issues, and we'll take the net loss. We're in this for the long term. This is a multi-year project for us.
Yeah.
It's more about people coming in, trying to centralize the project or trying to influence narratives in a new way. This kind of, you see the meme, I just discovered Bitcoin, I'm here to fix it, that
Right.
kind of thing. And also trying to defend against the basic principles of what we're trying to achieve here, which is just decentralized money and very simple properties, 21 million coins. Bitcoin has to do three things. It has to secure 21 million coins, has to issue new coins in the process, and it has to allow for censorship-resistant payments. And just protecting that is why people can get quite rabid.
right.
And I think it's kind of interesting. I took a long time to get my head around it because I think what it comes down to is this idea of learning in public, right? And learning in public when you've got 500 followers is different from 500,000 followers.
That's true, but I don't think that's where I have my differences with you all. In other words, I understand the idea that this is something worth protecting to you.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that this is something that is constantly under attack. It's under attack by people who don't even understand that they're attacking it. Let's assume that we go through all of this, okay? Maybe I have to pass some sort of a written, number 2 pencil bubble quiz. Assume that I get most of the answers right. At that point, what I understand of it is that this system has a bolt-on culture that is necessary potentially in order to get it to function. Like it may be that Bitcoin maximalism is a necessary part of Bitcoin for Bitcoin to work. So assume that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, it isn't just the protocol from the white paper or whatever. It's in fact a composite. It's like in Judaism, you have written Torah and you have oral Torah. So in a weird way, the culture of Bitcoin is one that is highly idealistic in its interior very often. It's not homogenous. So many different kinds of people live in this ecosystem. But then the crust of it is extremely unpleasant. And the idea that you have to have that kind of a dichotomy present between an idealism because you're trying to do something different and a sort of an armed wing. Let's think of it as the armed wing of the Bitcoiners, right? That's a known way of dividing things. Like Hamas, for example, does a lot of social services in Gaza with hospitals and schools and the like, and they also do firing of rockets. So it's very common to have some sort of idealistic thing coupled to some very aggressive military thing. And I don't see Bitcoin as particularly distinguished in that regard. And it's sad to me in part that the architecture of the coin isn't better so that the culture of the Bitcoiners can be less focused on this issue of attack. And of course, this was one of the problems to begin with, which was, what are we going to do? If this technology works, anyone can create a coin. And if anyone can create a coin, now we have a new problem, which is we've never had more than a handful of really important currencies before, right? So if you think about, for example, in fiat space, what are the really important liquid currencies? You've got USD, EUR, GBP, maybe you have CHF, JPY. It's, it thins out very, very quickly. Even Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Swiss, these are smaller. And so in part, this problem of the ability to create currencies at will mirrors, if you like, the fact that central bankers can print money at will. And this is one of the problems is that they have the ability to print, and you have to have a culture that stops printing. And so what you guys have figured out is that you have to have a culture that stops printing crypto and not printing it in the level of new Bitcoins, but new coins.
We can't really stop that though.
But in part, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make it non-profitable.
No, actually, I think what we're trying to do is, if you've been in long enough, you've seen people buy a new coin, make a profit, and then suddenly be in a loss as the rug gets pulled, and then that coin just dies off. Very few has survived multiple cycles. It's more about trying to guide people towards Bitcoin and what's different about it.
Yes and no. I would say that part of it is altruistic, saying, I don't want you to make these mistakes. There is the altruistic aspect of have fun being poor. You're trying to tell somebody you don't have to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're not going to win as much as if you'd got in 2011, but on the other hand, you don't have to lose. So in a weird way, even the completely charmless epithet have fun being poor or staying poor has a bit of idealism to it. Yeah. But here you are both talking your book. I mean, you said it yourself, that when your net worth is invested in this object, you have a different feeling about it. And the issue of talking one's book is distinct from warning other people, is distinct from having a preference for Bitcoin over everything else, if for no other reason than its ideology is different. It comes from a mysterious place that we don't yet understand. It's not trying to be smart contracts, although there are things that are bolt-ons and off to the side that may have those properties. So let's agree that there is some standard process by which people discover the world of crypto. They make certain canonical mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a way in which the community has been through this a million times. People come in at different levels. People come in just wanting to learn. Other people come in saying, don't worry, I've solved everything. And, buy Bruno coin or buy Sally coin or whatever it is, So you create your own. Okay. What I'm much more interested in is where is the really good conversation to be had around crypto in general, Bitcoin in particular, and the relationship between fiat and crypto, between that which is enforced by violence and that which is enforced by math.
Well, a lot of people in the circles I mix in, they don't even entertain the conversation of crypto. They don't even use the word. It's like, no, I'm not in crypto, I'm in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's just a bunch of bullshit. And the way I tend to think about it myself, the way I've compartmentalized it is that I consider Bitcoin to be my vault that's protected. It's protected by math, cryptography, and a rabid army of plebs who are, or cyber hornets as Saylor calls them, who are there to, protect Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then I consider all the other stuff. I think that's me taking a bit of money out of my vault and going to Vegas and going to the casino, just playing the roulette.
See, but this is one of these revelations, which is that you think of this primarily as money.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways in which I get into trouble with Bitcoiners is not thinking about this primarily as money.
Okay.
The issue of it being a form of money was important to getting people to adopt distributed computing. And so even if you view it as purely a technology, the fact that that technology was a technology built around money and it could make you rich in traditional terms by understanding it, is a very good example of getting fitness landscapes to cause the adoption of a new technology. So in a certain sense, wealth is its killer app so far. People are always saying, what's the application? Well, I would say one thing is that it's made a lot of people very wealthy. And so
true.
In a weird way, money is the killer app of the blockchain decentralized computing story. But if I continue to think about it as technology, in every other situation, people want to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
And the great danger in Bitcoin is, no, you can't innovate around this because it's money. Because it's money, it should be resistant to certain kinds of innovation. Then we get into a different discussion about, well, do you have to do something, in the main thread, or can you do something off to the side? And we're not really against innovation. My concern is that there are a huge number of uninteresting conversations to be had around this. And I don't want to waste your time and your listeners' time in one of the rivulets. One of the things that I've learned is that everybody sounds like something. And so whether or not I'm just saying the same thing everybody does when they alight in the Bitcoin universe, or whether I'm saying something different, people will hear it in terms of what they've already heard before.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I was talking to Travis on the way up, and even Rich, who's been kind enough to loan us his studio, is that a lot of the conversations are the same. Yeah, and it is good to get different voices on and hear different voices. And I was pestering you because I actually wanted to hear about the things you have to say. Whether or not I agree, it doesn't matter. We can debate those, but it is interesting to get into that. But it's funny that I don't consider this a technical revolution. This to me is a monetary revolution. I absolutely
You don't see this as a technical revolution?
No, I see it as a monetary revolution.
No, I see it as a technical revolution as well.
Yeah, I tell you,
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's both. The like shorthand way that I think about this a lot, and as a guy that runs an investment fund for a living, have definitely spent tons of time for years thinking about this. A lot of different use cases for distributed ledger technology. At the moment, money and specifically store of value appears to be the killer app right now. And when you evaluate these different use cases, I like to ask 4 questions. How ready is the tech for the world? How ready is the world for the tech? What do you need decentralization for? And how decentralized is decentralized enough? And in my opinion, and again, not a Bitcoin maximalist, fund doesn't reflect that. But I think Bitcoin more fully and convincingly answers those 4 questions than any other crypto asset in existence today. And that's not to say that there's not a lot of really interesting innovation that's going on down market cap from BTC, and ETH and what's going on with DeFi would be the poster child for that. But within those 4 questions, and specifically, I think, what do you need decentralization for, and how decentralized is decentralized enough? Well, if you need sovereign grade censorship resistance, you got to have a lot of decentralization for that. And that's Bitcoin that exists on 10,000 nodes all across the world. When you look at Ethereum, which is a smart contract platform, decentralized compute, however you want to say it, it's kind of at the furthest end of the spectrum in terms of decentralization for that kind of thing. And then all the way over on the right side is AWS. And man, AWS works amazing, right? And it's cheap. And we use it a lot for our business. And it's like, it's a great product. And if you're going to run, CryptoKitties, there's a question on what you need decentralization for versus just running CryptoKitties on top of AWS. And there's a lot of other competitor smart contract platforms to Ethereum that sit at different places along that spectrum. And I think it's the market is collectively trying to figure out what exactly do we need decentralization for, and how decentralized is decentralized enough.
see, one of the big debates right now between Bitcoin and Ethereum is to do with the consensus mechanism. But that, to me, isn't an argument over technology. That's an argument over the resulting impact it has on the monetary policy. Proof of work being free market and proof of stake being kind of a rebuilding of the system we have now, which can drive wealth inequality and centralizes power, centralizes the rewards from the system. Like anyone can spin up a miner and start earning Bitcoin. But with proof of stake, you already have to be invested. And the wealth is redistributed to the people who have the most money, and the power is. So for me, it definitely is a monetary revolution. There is technical aspects to it. But
Yeah, I'm not fighting the idea that it is a monetary revolution in particular. What I'm really trying to say is the first way it strikes me is as a new technology.
mm-hmm.
And the fact that money is part of the adoption scheme is weirdly, to me, part of the technology. I mean, I keep referring to Daniel Suarez's book, Demon and Freedom. And those books talk about a guy, I think, who dies and more or less puts an entire world in motion after his death by using incentive structures and technology. And so in a weird way, this is something that causes humans to adopt it by making them richer.
Hmm.
And by getting humans who are curious and are high in trait openness, if you did a big 5 personality inventory, maybe it requires less of it now. Yes, that wealth building ability is part of the tech. Now, the problem and what makes it unique is that if I disrupt the tech platform, I may disrupt the wealth, and that causes people to want to freeze it in. Now, we have analogs of this. There is, for example, the last line of the Torah says something about, and there never came another that God knew like Moses. And if you think about Islam, there's this concept of bid'ah, or innovation, which is a bad thing. If you innovate after Muhammad, then you've taken this perfect interaction that Muhammad and God have had, and you've sullied it, And so in a weird way, the idea is we've had our divine moment, and don't touch this thing. And that's not true at a certain level. There's lots of work being done on Bitcoin and around it. But there's another weird way in which, it is really true. Don't touch this thing. And that comes from its monetary nature, not from its technological nature as a pure sort of digital technology, not the meta technology that includes money as its adoption process. Sorry.
If you're competing against gold, we've been using gold to store value for 5,000 years. The incumbent has this like stunning head start on you. And in order to convince increasingly more people to adopt this alternative store of value based on this technology that people don't really understand all that well, I think being slow to change, that's like a feature, not a bug, right? And I'm always reminded of, Peter, you've definitely seen the movie Snatch, right?
Yeah, of course.
You ever seen that movie,
Yeah.
Snatch?
Guy Ritchie.
Yeah. Anyways, one of my all-time favorite movies. And this Russian mobster sells this gun to one of the main characters. And he hands it to him. It's this like enormous old-looking revolver. And the guy goes, a little heavy, isn't it? And the Russian mobster goes, heavy is good. Heavy is reliable. And like in a lot of ways, that's how I think of like Bitcoin as it changes on the main chain. Like it just needs to, if it's going to compete against gold, people need to understand that it's going to be the same. It's just really hard to change. Yeah.
And I think some of the competing cryptocurrencies, they're making trade-offs which might sound like it's a better technology. I mean, I get trolled all the time. I'm into the boomer coin. Bitcoin's the boomer coin. It's slow, blah blah blah. And what I don't think they understand is as the properties that make it the best form of money. So if you make we went through the scaling wars. We had this war, and Bitcoin won. And the reason it won is because the trade-offs aren't worth it. When you went for bigger blocks, you further centralize the project. If you try and be faster, you further centralize the projects. So I'm not opposed. I think a lot of Bitcoiners wouldn't be opposed to if a better Bitcoin comes, but there just isn't.
Well, but it's also less. Actually, I don't really believe that. I really believe at some level that when you have your wealth bound up in this thing, you have multiple feelings about it, right? And one of the feelings is I want to get richer, right? And so if there was some opportunity to have a much better decentralized form of money and smart contracts and all this stuff, and it was going to obliterate your wealth, you wouldn't be indifferent to it.
But you could put your money easily into that.
Maybe, but maybe you're slow to figure it out because you're a big Bitcoin maximalist and you spent the first 4 years of its life, whatever this new thing is, talking about it as shitcoin. Okay.
But, yeah.
What I'm trying to get at is let's cut the crap.
All right.
Right. So, the fact is we have an asset. It's making people richer. In a weird way, they're both philosophical about it. They're also disingenuous about it. Then you have the people coming in from outside. They are both knowledgeable about things other than Bitcoin, and they're also posers. And they both want to change the world, and they both want to rip people off. Right. All of these things are going on. And I want to have the conversation after all of the typical foreplay.
Okay.
Right. So all of the foreplay has to do about, no, we don't really mean this. We may appear this way, but we're actually trying to do something. And if you get to know it, whatever, doesn't matter. The more interesting thing to me is this technology and this new form of money is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's new and it means something. And what I want to get to is, well, where are we really headed? And what does it do? And is this really a store of freedom? We talk about a store of value, but is this really an effective store of freedom? If the world's major governments decide that they can't stop the technology, but they can cause the penalties to be very high, just the way we do for counterfeiting.
Counterfeiting
Fiat currency.
by the populace, not by the government, because
Right.
the government counterfeits.
Well, the government prints.
It's counterfeiting.
No, it's not. It's retaining a right to transfer wealth by printing fiat currency.
I think they're counterfeiting.
They're counterfeiting.
I think the government counterfeits
What
currency
does that
when they
mean?
print it. Because it's no different to if I was to create a machine to print money.
No, I mean the definition of counterfeiting is like, making fake money, and the government, part of its role is it gets to create real
Government
money.
creates, or if you like, just to riff off this, the government creates a fake reality, if that's what you want to call.
Yeah. But they get
civics.
to. They get to print their way out of
All
mistakes.
right. So
We
now
don't.
the idea is that you have civics as fake,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So we have a fake democracy. We have a fake military that deals out real death. I don't know where we're going with this. In other words, I may be your ally in saying I can't stand the government's
Mhm.
right to print money and claim that it's engaging in stimulus or relief or, lubricating the economy or who knows what. Right? You're transferring wealth by diluting.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I just consider it legalized counterfeiting.
But you just said you have to say legalized.
Yeah, like I'm just saying, it's the exact same app. If I could create perfect notes,
Should we call tax theft?
I mean, I think there's certain people who are listening who want me to say that.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say, which
Yeah.
is, this is the problem I have with all of these conversations.
I'm not an anarchist, though.
Whatever. But we get into these things where we just have these typical well-worn conversations about things like, is printing money counterfeiting? You know as well as I do that it is if you believe governments are legitimate, then they're retaining a right over their fiat currency to make more of it, diluting people in the process, right? So they're going to devalue it through the mechanism of seigniorage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can say seigniorage and we're not going to get upset, but if you want to say counterfeiting, I'm going to sit there and say, well, what's the dictionary definition? If a government counterfeits in its own currency, I agree that if you start printing euros and you're the United States, then you've got a different issue. But does the United States have the right to print US dollars if it enforces its currency by violence? Yes, it calls counterfeiting what it does done by anyone who is not it.
There we go. I like that. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but my point being is they have the right to print their way out of their mistakes, and we don't.
That's right.
Yeah. So okay, let's do it a different way then. Shall we theorize the impact of the growth in Bitcoin? If it just continues to grow, what will the impact be? Rather than debate whether tax is theft and yada yada, theorize where it goes then. What is the actual impact?
Well, at some point, crypto gets big enough that our governments who issue fiat currency are going to want a do-over.
Mm-hmm.
And that scares the crap out of me. Because the number one ploy will be to say, if we catch you transacting in this, we're going to make your life hell. And we're not going to catch all of you. Right? If you decide that you're going to print a dollar bill on your home printer, the odds that we're going to catch you are very, very low. But we're going to make the penalty very, very high so you don't start experimenting with this. All right, well, that's what you're going to start to see. You're going to start to see draconian penalties for doing things that are difficult to stop using crypto if we are not careful.
What do you think the likelihood is of that outcome?
Depends. I mean, there are a lot of ways that the Bitcoin story goes south in a very dangerous way. And
By south, you mean like Bitcoin fails, or you mean like south, like it gets so big that
we don't know. This is a novel object.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what makes it exciting is novelty. Now, when you hear many people talking about Bitcoin, they will talk about it as if its past will be its future. The most remarkable thing about Bitcoin, by far, is every day I check it and it's not zero against the US dollar. And I think this thing is a miracle. And literally,
Lindy effect. People love that word in Bitcoin.
Is that right?
Yeah. Just means it's been around.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how impressed I am every day that it's not at zero. It's just one more day, this thing, which the prize for taking this thing down is enormous. Effectively, it's offering a bounty. And it hasn't happened, even after like the Mount Gox, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It has been very durable. And that's one of the reasons why it has a very stable following of people who are fanatical, because everybody wants to take it down. I mean, you think George Soros wouldn't enjoy speculating against Bitcoin and making billions and showing up the community?
He's actually been investing in the asset class. He's actually gone the other way. But
well, I'm just
sure. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
How much fun to have all the Bitcoiners in your back pocket because you skin them alive. Now that world in which Bitcoin continues to exist has to reconcile with itself with the fact that Bitcoin hasn't been exposed to most things that can happen. Bitcoin has happened during a period of relative quiet in terms of the world's, let's say, military engagements. It has taken place in a period of relative technological stagnation. I don't know how Bitcoin behaves more generally, or what happens when it gets close to its 21 million ceiling, or anything. I don't know how it will continue to deal with its challenges. Now, it's got a large number of years where it hasn't fallen apart. But no, this is a dangerous object. To your point about gold, we know a lot more about gold. I mean,
dangerous in what way though? What, dangerous as a threat to government?
Well, let's think about gold, the US dollar, and Bitcoin in the same terms.
Yeah.
Okay. Gold comes not only from physics, but from violent physics. It doesn't just come from stars. It comes from like collisions and explosions of stars. It's very hard to make gold.
Mm-hmm.
Fiat comes from a printing press and the threat of violence. So we've got gold that comes from violent engagements of stars. We've got USD, which comes from the full faith and violence of the US government.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Bitcoin that comes from what?
Peaceful revolution. Come on. You're not reading it, Carter's?
It comes from elliptic curves. It comes from math. And in a weird way, that shift towards number theory, it's to make sure that you have a form of money that reveals a potential undoing. If there's a huge change in quantum computing or cryptography, or we come to understand that there's a back door, if we have some change, for example, in physics, maybe we can make gold atoms out of helium and hydrogen. I don't know. Potentially you always have the problem of a central bank goes hyperinflationary and just runs the printing presses morning, noon, and night. All of these things have a problem, because if you think about the traditional definition of money, we have store of value and medium of exchange
Mm-hmm.
and unit of account and all these things. It may be that there really isn't any good example of money.
Well, they're all relative to each other.
Right? That's the point.
And depending on what you're measuring it on.
Well, but one of the issues is, does the volatility of the exchange rate, if it's volatile enough, actually function as a threat to store of value, even assuming there's no drift of the median exchange rate?
It's only been volatile to the upside over any kind of like meaningful amount of time, right?
Well, this is the point. You have a long-term trend, and so you can detrend it. You can subtract off the trend and just say, what is its propensity of the exchange rate? Can we remember it's not Bitcoin, it's the exchange rate of Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
that has the volatility to it. So then you can ask, okay, well, how volatile is this asset on an annualized basis? It's pretty volatile. Now, that means that even if the middle point, however you want to define it, doesn't move that much, if I get in when it's very high and then it mean reverts and it goes way below, that is not going to be a great store of value for me based on my entry points and my exit points.
Mm-hmm.
And so in part, Bitcoin, its volatility is part of a threat to its use as money.
Well, I don't think
Yeah.
you can't go from zero to, gold's worth $10 trillion in aggregate. You can't go from 0 to 10 trillion without volatility in the price.
But imagine, for example, that with gold, imagine a new element. I don't know, Preciousium. Okay, so Preciousium transacts where it can be $5, the exchange rate of 5 and 5,000, and it doesn't drift relative to USD. Okay, just imagine. But it really varies within that range between 5 and 5,000. That's a tough store of value, even if you believe in some sense that it doesn't drift. It means that where you enter and where you exit really make a difference.
But the market is pricing in a new global money. And as Travis said, that you can't go from 0 to 1, 5, 10 trillion over 10 years, 12 years without some volatility.
Well, but again, do you want it to be volatile? Do you want, in some sense, if I think about 3 different universes, I have the universe of, let's say, consumer prices. Okay. I have the universe of fiat currencies, and I have the universe of crypto.
Mm-hmm.
So if those are 3 vertices of a triangle, then the edges of the triangle are all exchange rates. Even the price of a consumer good in fiat currency is really an exchange rate, right? How many pairs of tennis shoes? Okay. What should those legs look like if fiat currency is itself garbage?
Well, this is all relative again.
No, things are just going to keep getting more expensive, right? Isn't that the answer?
Well, so that was my point, is that assume that the dollar, for example, has a property that with respect to consumer prices, that it has low variation with respect to consumer prices, but it has a high propensity to be inflated away. Just assume that that's true for the moment. And then assume that Bitcoin had a low propensity to be inflated away, but had extremely high volatility with both of the other objects because they both have low volatility relative to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So in some sense, you would have one vertex being a better traditional store of value, but subject to sky-high volatility. And you have the other thing being a better medium of exchange with respect to short-term fluctuation, but being a very poor store of value over a long term. Okay.
But that's how we use money, right?
Yeah, so this is this view that gold is good at storing value over time, but not space.
Mm-hmm.
And fiat currency is good at storing value over space, but not time. And Bitcoin is superior at both because it's instantly transferable anywhere in the world, really cheap, and it has the properties to store value very, very well. In Austrian economics terms, it's the hardest money in human history. And to your earlier point, the world hasn't actually ever had anything like it before. But there's like a qualitative framework around assessing potential stores of value that's been around for a long time, right? Gold, 5,000 years. Before gold, we're using salt, seashells, really big, heavy rocks. And there's a reason that, like, when gold came along, over time, humans decided collectively that gold is better at storing value than salt. And it's like an Austrian economics framework: hard money versus soft, sound versus unsound, the 6 characteristics of money: durable, divisible, portable, uniform, accepted, scarce. And when you line salt up next to gold, gold's definitely the winner there. And then when you put Bitcoin up next to gold, you can make a real credible claim that Bitcoin is superior in 5 out of 6 of those characteristics. And it's really just acceptability, given that gold is like not really the foundation of the global financial system, but like kind of, because central banks hold a lot of it. And Bitcoin's made pretty good headways in terms of acceptability versus a 5,000-year-old asset in 12 years.
Great. I mean, it's something wildly new, super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you guys really want to talk about? No, seriously, because there's some level at which I
Well-
don't want to. Wait, just one second. I don't want to talk about Austrian economics one more time. And I don't want to talk about mediums of exchange and units of account one more time. And I don't want to talk about central bankers one more time. You guys want to talk about something.
Well, we talk about this stuff every week.
Yeah.
You know, you're a different voice. You have a lot of conversations with other people.
Yeah.
You meet a lot of people. I want to know what you think. Where are the areas you want to get into? What is interesting you in Bitcoin? Like, what are the topics where you're like, what is it making you think? You know, in terms of threats, opportunity. You're definitely interested. I know you see the threat of inflation, and I know you recognize.
I see the threat of abundance. I hate abundance. Everybody in my world just goes crazy for abundance. They go to Burning Man one day a year or 1 week a year, and then they have these experiences, right? And they say, oh my God, it was so beautiful. Everybody was gifting. Oh, I wish Burning Man could be 365 days a year. And there's a relationship at Burning Man between Black Rock City, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they call the default world. Have you been?
I
You
haven't.
been?
I've heard
Okay.
good things.
All right. So they say, welcome home. This has always been your home. And you've left the default world. And the default world is fiat mediated, right? And so there's a weird way in which Bitcoin and BlackRock City are like real things. They're durable. They've been doing the BlackRock City for quite some time, since it was on Baker Beach. And there's a relationship between the old world, that is fiat currency or the default world, and Bitcoin or Burning Man, because Burning Man couldn't exist without the default world. You spend 51 weeks a year earning in the default world to blow it on 1 week at Burning Man, right? There's all that treasure that gets trucked into the desert came from somewhere. And in a certain way, at some level, fiat currency is inextricably intertwined with Bitcoin and with crypto in a way that's uncomfortable because, of course, the BlackRock City folks want to do away with the default world. They want to live in BlackRock City.
Isn't that a barter economy when you're there?
Pardon me? There's no thing that looks like an economy once you're in Burning Man.
Isn't it like exchanging of things, though?
You gift things. You
gift
don't
things.
expect.
So it's a
Sorry, I lost the comparison to Bitcoin through that.
Oh, that you have worlds that feel free of the old, but they're actually inextricably connected.
yeah.
See, when people have their wealth in Bitcoin, and then you see them clutching their heads in pain, as some were doing recently.
I don't know. Some of us were laughing.
Some people were talking about why don't some of the people who have mediated this crash understand the toll in human lives? I just put everything I had into this asset. Blah
Well,
blah
they're
blah.
an idiot.
Oh, should we tell them that?
Well, I think I just did.
Okay.
I mean, look, there was two kinds of reactions to what happened over that week. There were the Bitcoiners who just laughed, and there's the shitcoiners who are in Bitcoin who were devastated.
No, the Bitcoiners didn't just laugh.
A lot of the ones I know did.
That's not what
Travis didn't because he's
No, a
he's a
lot of
trader.
people didn't laugh.
a lot of people did laugh though.
A lot of people laughed, and a lot of people didn't laugh.
Should we talk about the ones who did first
Sure,
and talk about why they did?
we should do that. But again, I'm put in mind the fact that you asked a question, which is, what is the relationship of BlackRock City and Bitcoin? And my comment is that there's an uncomfortable relationship to the outside world that you're trying to disintermediate, and the fact that you are dependent in some sense on that outside world.
Big time. Yeah.
Right. And so my claim, which was supposed to be uncomfortable, but hey, maybe Bitcoiners are all just geniuses and the rest of us are all fucking idiots, is that it wasn't universally seen as fun.
Of course not. Yeah.
Right. It just wasn't. And it bothers me that we're going to retcon this and say, oh yeah, real Bitcoiners didn't even bother. They didn't even notice.
Didn't
They don't
flinch.
even.
No.
They didn't flinch.
Look, I'm
wasn't the
being
point he was trying to
no, I'm being slightly facetious, but the point I'm trying to make is the overall narrative of what happened over the week, right? Bitcoin's had a great year, but Bitcoin, as we said, it's meant to be decentralized, and decentralization isn't just a decentralization of the tech; it's a decentralization of the power. If you look at the how the process works for doing upgrades to Bitcoin, the
Yeah.
VIP process, the review process, the social consensus that's reached, the test, the building of the code, the testing of the code, the deployment, the signaling for the code. That is a beautifully designed, decentralized process to ensure it's hard to change, and when changes come, they're necessary and they're big and important upgrades to the system. What we had was a centralization of power and influence over narrative and market prices, which came essentially a lot from Elon Musk, who's been kind of schizophrenically changing his opinions on Bitcoin. And that a lot of Bitcoiners don't like that because it's too much power and concentration.
Who gave him this power?
Well, he took it.
He
Yeah,
took it.
yeah. I
He
mean,
bought
it's-
it. He bought $1.5 billion.
well,
That
actually,
may be, but
no,
you
no.
guys-
In fairness, Travis, we also gave it to him because I mean, myself, I was like celebrating. This is amazing. Tesla are involved. This is going to be great because other companies are going to think about it. I now reflect on that as okay. We go through learning journeys with anything. But I reflect on it and go, actually, that was wrong because there was too much power in the hands of somebody who's highly influential, also erratic, and he can influence the narrative, which will happen. And he's also got all other weird incentive structures going on with his business and carbon credits. And that's why it was kind of like, actually, this would be better if he went. It's like the meme that came out. It was like this car on a road. Did you see it? It's like the car can go two ways, and the sign says, number go up or tell a billionaire to fuck off. And the car's going that way. And the point being is, Bitcoiners will tell him to fuck off. It doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk or Travis, Pete, Eric, whoever. We don't want
But you
concentration of
partially
power.
got into trouble because you forgot your own culture.
How do you mean?
Super sexy man with rockets,
Yeah.
smartest man on earth, et cetera, coolest dude ever, embraces Bitcoin. It's like, oh, you see, mom?
Yeah, no.
I told you this was going to be something.
Yeah, we all got excited.
Big time.
Right?
Yeah. It's a weird balance of anti-fragility, which, I think a lot of Bitcoiners would argue is one of Bitcoin's greatest properties, where you have periods of time where a single individual or a group or an organization moves into a position where they can have an outsized influence on, price or potentially the direction of the project, like let's say in the block debate in 2017. And, I think the Bitcoiners have this long storied history of these back and forths towards like, well, we appreciate that somebody is shining a light on why this is important, but at the same time, deeply understanding that decentralization is one of the most critical
You don't have a
components.
long storied history. You just don't. I mean, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm 55 years old, and if I know somebody for the length of time that Bitcoin has been on Earth, I don't consider them an old friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's a fair point.
Great point.
Next point. When you guys were going through your loving Elon phase, because Elon smiled and that gave legitimacy, it spoke to me about things we don't like to talk about, which is I've taken so much shit for holding this asset that's made me rich. It feels wonderful.
Yeah, it was validation.
I understand that. But that broke your rule, right? We don't trust, we validate. Who did the validation? Some outside force. You allowed,
Not
on
me.
average, the community, which isn't a community. You don't understand when nobody speaks for Bitcoin.